Are you tired of pesky pirate pillaging your village and taking all your crops and hard work and all your women? Do you want health care or retirement packages? Then, bud, do I have a deck for you? Today we're going to be talking about black. Remember, once you go black, you don't go back.
It's loading.
Today I'm going to be talking about Smoker and Sakazuki. A lot of people think that Smoker is the right pick for black in this meta. However, I think Smoker's ability is a little underwhelming, and one of his ability is if you put a Dawn to him, you can give minus cost to something on the field, and if there's a 0 cost on the field, Smoker gets an extra 1,000 power. While it might seem good, it helps stuff like your Sakazukis and your Kobis get higher thresholds and more value on their pops and their removals. Sometimes it feels like it can be a little underwhelming. That's why I want to present another option later on in the deck builds. We're going to be talking about Sakazuki. With Sakazuki, you can pay 3, discard a card, and KO something on the field that costs 0. Now, you might be like, how many times are things going to cost 0? Well, Smoker's ability, how many times are things going to cost 0? In the late game, if you have Big Coup down on the field, he's going to be popping, 5 drops just for 3 Dawn and discard a card that's useless. It seems pretty good to me. Maybe I'm just tripping, but I'd like to explore that. With that said, let's jump into the core.
The core.
First card in the core slot goes to Tetsuru. Not the blocker one, although we will get into that. We're talking about the one that has 2k counter power in hand. On play, you can give something -2 play cost, so sometimes if you need to play it, she's kind of like the black version of Tama. She can help lower those thresholds, let Kobe get a 5-drop pop, so it's a very good card. Anytime something's 2k counter power anyways, it's almost, something you always consider, but this is definitely one that we run in the deck. The next card in the core is Don Quixote Rolls a Net. I think that's how you say that. It's a 2k blocker. Yeah. The next card in the core spot is Granny Blocker Tetsuru. Again, we've got her, but now she's a blocker with a shameless anime screen grab. Stop doing screen grabs, please. The next card we're going to talk about in the core slot is Kobe. On play, you can discard a card from your hand and KO something on the field that costs 3 or less. Now, with other cards like Tetsuru or maybe Smoker's ability, you're not always going to be popping 3 costs on the field. It might be a 4 cost or a 5 cost, and that's kind of the advantage of this deck. You can always try to get a little more mileage out of your cards, such as Kobe. I think Kobe is a phenomenal card in the deck, so we run 4 of them. The next card is Tashigi from the Structure deck. She's a 2k 1,000 counter power, and activate on main, you can get something on the field -2 play cost. This is like Tetsuru, because activate main effects can happen automatically, so it is an on-play effect, but it can be repeating if your opponent doesn't swing into it and lets you just keep it on the field. Although she's a little brittle with only 4,000 power, she can stay on the field, and she's also at 2k 1,000 counter power in hand, so there's no reason not to run 4. The next card we're going to be talking about in the core is Little Coup. He costs 4 and has 5,000 power on the field. And on play, you draw a card, which is nice because black doesn't have a lot of card draw. It's similar to OP1 Kaido in that sense that you're not going to be drawing a lot of cards, so you have more of a top end. But this has more of a middle end. Kuzan also has the effect that when he attacks, he gets something on the field -4 cost. Now, if you have him on the field and you swing, you -4 cost something, and you play something like a Kobe or a Sakazuki, you're just gonna murder whatever big threat they drop down on the field, and it's gonna feel really good. So for that reason, we run 4. The next card in the core is Barcelino. He can't be KO'd by your opponent's effect, so if they want to try to Wrath Kaido, you're like, that's cool, but Barcelino he don't care. He also gets 1,000 power on your opponent's turn, making him a 6,000 blocker. He has counter power in hand too, so that's really nice, because some of the super rares don't normally do that. So Barcelino can't be KO'd. Just a pesky card to deal with? Yeah, why not run 4? The next card in the core is Sakazuki, the big bad himself. He costs 6 and has 7,000 power. On play, you can trash a card from hand and KO something on your opponent's side of the field that costs 5 or less. Now, if we have things like Tetsuru or Tashigi on the field that are minusing cost, or maybe even using Smoker, this threshold increases from 5 to 7 to 8 to 6. A lot of good numbers that can pop things, especially like on the green side of the field. It can pop big kids, it can pop mid kids. It can even take down an or a new gate if it has to, if you have enough on it. You know, Tetsuru's kind of just like Black Sotama, so with 2 Tetsurus and Sakazuki, you're taking out Newgate. The next card in the core is Big Kuzan. He costs 10 and has 10,000 power. And on play, he KOs something that costs 0. His other effect is on your turn, all of your opponent's characters cost 5 less. Now, comboed with that, when he comes into play, he's going to kill a 5-drop or lower on your opponent's side of the field. And later on in the match, if he stays on the field, everything on your opponent's field is going to cost 5 less. Now, comboed with Sakazuki Leader, you can just pay 3 to pop any 5-drop from there on. I think this card in Smoker, you probably only want to run 3, but with the Sakazuki package, you're already discarding cards, so you'll discard stuff that doesn't have counter power. You want to run 4 in that build. The next card in the core is Shockwave. It costs 2 and gives one of your characters or your leader 4,000 counter power. And it also has another effect that it KOs an active character that costs 3 or less, so this can help get rid of some pesky blockers. But if your opponent sees you have 2 Dawn up, they can usually play around it, so it's something you have to kind of be cautious of. It also has a trigger effect when it comes out of life. You can KO one of your opponent's characters that costs 4 or less. That's almost a better effect, but it's still a very good event, so we run around 1 to 4 of this depending on our build. That is it for the core. Now we have about 36 to 40 cards in the core, so a little bit of wiggle room, about 14 to 10 cards that we can replace. I think depending on which leader you choose, which most will probably choose Smoker, and that's fine. Play Smoker if you think that's great. Really want you to, but if you want to take a dance on the wild side, Sakazuki boy, let's jump into some of the cards we can run in those slots.
Flex spots.
The first card in the flex spot is Sengoku. He's a 2k 1,000 power in hand, so automatically it's something to consider just because of that alone. He also has an effect when attacking. If he has 1 Dawn under him, he can give -2 cost to something on your opponent's side of the field. Now, if you have to play a matchup where you feel like you need that extra -2 cost, and you're not seeing Tetsurus or Tashigis, this card can be a good replacement. I honestly think you probably just want to keep him in hand as a counter power. The next card in the flex spot is Monkey D. Garp. He has 2k counter power in hand, he costs 2 and is 3,000 power. So the 2k counter is almost just enough to run him himself. And he has an effect, he has 2 Dawn under him when attacking. You can blow up something on your opponent's side of the field that costs 0. Now, you don't have to trash a card for this, so this is a little different from Kobe or your other options that have the same effect, so it's a card to consider. The next card we're going to be going over is Helmeppo. He costs 2, and on play, he gives something -3 play cost on your opponent's side of the field. This combo with something like Kobe or Sakazuki, you're killing big threats, so it's definitely a card to consider. The next card in the flex spot is Asuka. She's kind of like Basil Hopkins in the fact that if she has 1 Dawn under her and she KOs something, then she's going to restand herself. She only costs 3 and has 4,000 power, but in this deck, sometimes you're not using all your Dawn, so just having her on the field with 1 Dawn can, do wonders against Zoro and little things like that. They probably won't block her, so it's a free hit going through, or they might just have to discard a bunch of cards. I think late game, if you load her up and they can't deal with her, this could be a really problematic card. The next card to consider is Little Smoker. He can't be KO'd by effects. And when attacking, if there's a character that costs 0 on the field, he gets plus 2,000 power, making his power 6,000. This is a pretty decent card. I think you run this more in Smoker, not in the Sakazuki package. So this is a card to consider because it's hard to remove and it can be a little pesky attacker. Jagger D. Saul is a vanilla 6k. I talked about in Whitebeard how important just 4 cost 6k vanillas are in this meta currently. This is a card to consider. I don't see a lot of lists running him, but I think you could, kind of run away with games just having a 6k power on the field. 1 Dawn makes him 7, because Black's power is a little low, so you might want to consider that just if you need more beats in the deck. The next card in the flex spot is Hina. She costs 5 and has 6,000 power. She's also a blocker, and she has an effect on block that you can choose one of your opponent's characters that costs 6 or less, and it cannot attack this turn. Now, your opponent's probably going to play around this pretty effectively, but if you're having them play around it, you're still altering their game. You're making them play your game and not their game, which I feel like is an advantage, and especially against decks like Zoro or Kinemon, this card could really just mess with their head. I think it's a card to consider. The next flex spot goes to the Structure Deck Monkey D. Garp. He costs 5 and has 6,000 power. When he's on the field, you can activate his main effect by trashing a card and KOing something on your opponent's side of the field that costs 4 or less. This is a pretty good effect, and I don't see a lot of decks running a lot of him. That's probably because he doesn't have counter power, but nonetheless, you can activate his effect on main. If your opponent doesn't deal with this, you're going to keep popping, pesky things. If you have a big Kuzan too, you can just kill something that costs 9, like Edward Newgate's. That's pretty crazy. It can be explosive, so your opponent will have to deal with him. It's a good card to consider. The next card to consider is Sexy Smoker. He costs 5 and has 7,000 power and can't be KO'd by your opponent's effects. And if your opponent has a card that costs 0 or less on the field, well, can't cost less than 0, but if it is cost 0 and you have Warren Dawn under him, he gains double attack. This is more of a mid-range card that is your finisher. Essentially, you're like, okay, I get this down, you can't deal with them, I'm going to wait, swing with him, and make you take that life. Now, you have to have something on your opponent's side of the field that costs 0, so Smoker is probably the leader you want to choose to play with Sexy Smoker. It's more of your top-end package, so it's definitely a card to consider. The next card to consider is Ice Age. You only consider this card if you're running the Sakazuki package, because this card is straight butt. It costs 1 and makes one of your opponent's characters cost 5 or less, which in combo with Sakazuki, you're just like, okay, cool card. Bow! For 4, you're going to just kill something that costs 5 or less. Pretty crazy. You don't run a lot of them in the Sakazuki package, just enough to deal with some pesky things on your opponent's side of the field. You can kill those secret rare Yamatos that are staring you down trying to take your life and not give it in hand. It also has a trigger effect that kills something that costs 3 or less on your opponent's side of the field. So if you do see it in life and you see something to take out, don't put it in hand. Just get rid of that thing on the field. The next card in the flex spot is Great Eruption. It costs 1 and lets you draw a card. It also gives something on your opponent's side of the field -2 cost. This combo with Sakazuki or even Smoker to help get that 0 cost on the field can be a nice effect. It also replaces itself by drawing a card. It has a trigger effect that your opponent discards a card. Unless your opponent has like one card in hand, I don't see the point in activating this. Might be good against Zoro, but I'd rather just take this to hand, play it next turn, make something cost 2 less, potentially make it cost 0, get rid of it if it's a blocker or something like that, and just let you go through. The last card on the flex spots is Meteor Volcano. When you play this card, you can KO up one of your opponent's characters that cost 1 or less. This is going to be very good against aggressive decks like Zoro. I keep saying, it's good against Zoro because Zoro's a threat this meta, so you're going to see him at your locals. And if you don't, I don't know, you should probably, if you don't see Zoro at your meta, you should play Zoro. You play Zoro. Meteor Volcano can get rid of little pesky things on the field like Sunny-kuns, beige Capones, little blue Laws. It also has an effect that out of life you can draw 2 cards and discard 1. So if you do see it in life and your opponent's just got big things on the field, go ahead and draw 2 cards and discard 1. That's Dagon Queen's effect. That's what made Kaido so good. And especially with this deck can be very slow at times, that effect can really just help boost your game and just hand filter a little bit. It is card advantage because you will get a +1 card. It's definitely a good effect and something to consider.
Deck builds.
That does it for the flex spots. So now we're going to jump into the deck profiles. And like I said, there's 2 leaders you can really run in black. There's Smoker and there's Sakazuki. I think if you want to run more of a mid-range package, you choose Smoker. If you think you want to do more of a control package and play a slower game, Sakazuki is probably a better leader. So I'm going to showcase both of these leaders in the deck list, and I'll let you decide which one you want to play.
Mid-range.
So here we have the Smoker build. The first card in here that's different is the Monkey D Garp. 2k counter in hand. With Smoker's effect, he's going to be minusing something, so the swing might be relevant with Garp. More so just a 2k counter in hand to help protect your other dudes. The next card in the flex spot is Monkey D Garp again. The one from the structure deck. You can activate main, discard a card, and get rid of a 4 cost or less. With Smoker, that's going to be a 5 cost or less on your turn. You can change the spot. I just want to have more removal usually in my deck, so that's why I put him in this spot, but it's totally easy to replace it with something else. The next spot is Sexy Smoker. He's got double attack. He's going to be one of your main attackers in this deck. You could bump it up to 3, but it doesn't do anything when it comes into play. Just kind of sits on the field and stares at your opponent for a little bit, so that's why I didn't bump the number up to a whole bunch. It's kind of your finisher, so smaller package, yeah. Keep it at 2 in here. You could run it at 3 or 4 if you want. I would not go up to 4 on this card. I just don't believe in it that much, but it's good right now. Probably get replaced in the future with better cards. The next card is Meteor Volcano. So in this deck, if you're minusing something by 1 with Smoker, then you're killing a 2-drop with this card. It's pretty good. I like it against Zoro. Like I said, at least in my locals, Zoro's been rampant everywhere. Playing 4 copies of this and just playing this on turn 2 to get rid of a Sunny Coon when they played that on turn 1 just gives you so much tempo.
Control.
The next build is Sakazuki. I really believe in this leader. It's one I've been testing out. I think it shows some pretty promising results. It's a little more like Kaido in that you want to go to the late game, but if you can get a big Kuzan, then this deck does a lot of work. So the first spot goes to Asuka. I play her in here because, like I said, in Zoro, I'm going to just repeat myself. Zoro is everywhere. It's a good deck. It was a decent deck last meta, but this meta just gets so much with that 1-drop package. So this can help you early game, deal with pesky things, get 2 swings on them. That's a problem with a lot of control decks is if they die early, they can kind of just get gassed out that way. So we run this to help with that early game. The next card is Hina. A lot of decks can play around this, but I just like this because it's another blocker or a slower build, and it can just stop multiple swings from getting in. Sometimes your opponent can't play around that, so that's pretty good, and that's why I keep it at 4. The next card in this build is Ice Age. I only run 2 because I really think this is honestly a bad card, but with this deck and the pool that Black has right now, it can be okay. It's really just a removal spell, but you have to get rid of 2 cards to use this because you have to use this and you have to discard with Sakazuki. So why it's only at 2, just because it's not the best card in the world. It can help get rid of things in the mid game that can be troublesome. I think it's okay in Sakazuki. You don't run this in Smoker. It's not a great card, but with Sakazuki, it can be a decent card and remove things when you need it to. The next card is Great Eruption. We're minusing cost. We want to kill things with Sakazuki. This one does replace itself by drawing a card, unlike Ice Age, but it only gives something -2 cost, so you're paying 4 to get rid of something small. You could really just use Kobe and it'd be more impactful. But with Sakazuki, you have the option to remove smaller things on the field earlier in the game with this. So we run it at 3. That does it for this video. I hope it was helpful in deciding which package you want to run, whether it be the Smoker or the Sakazuki. If I miss any cards, put them in the comments. And if you see another leader that you want to run in this meta that I haven't covered, put that in the comments too. And if you go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. I'll see y'all in the future. He's also at 2k,000 power. 2k,000. Why do I keep saying that? That's like 200,000. No, that's not real.